for the LA Times, the USA Today, and also an advisor for the DCCC. This is a DCCC day.
It is. And Sean says that our studio is the color of his dining room.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Okay, good taste.
Good taste. So, Sean, everybody says that Democrats are going to lose. You look at the history, Democrats are going to lose. You look at the redistricting, Democrats are going to lose. Tell me why Democrats aren't going to lose in the House races.
I really look forward to the morning after the election when I get to come on this set, and we'll see what's right. Look, the voters will decide that. What we're going to do is fight for good jobs and good health care and safe streets, and we are going to end the pandemic and grow the economy. And the other side is trying to throw up barriers to voting and taking us back to an era when states' rights arguments were used to suppress the vote and to engage in racial discrimination. I think that's a good comparison in the swing districts, and we'll let the voters do it.
What about the blocking and tackling in the swing districts? Are your members holding town hall meetings every weekend? Are they knocking on doors every weekend? Are they doing the blocking and tackling that Democrats haven't always been good at doing in the past?
I think that's a fantastic question, and we've just moved a huge number of resources into early community organizing, into community engagement. We're not just going to get back on the ground after the pandemic, we're going to build that back better. We are going to be in communities with cultural competence, with local people working who are trained to do so. I'm a big believer in getting away from the air wars we always fight, back to the basics. And so you better believe that we are going to be on the ground, and it starts with great candidates and great members of Congress doing their work and delivering on things like this infrastructure package, on things like ending the pandemic, on bringing resources to local police departments, which we're doing, and every Republican voted against.
Right.
Those are the results we're going to be running on. We're going to deliver.
Hey, Kurt, there's you're a former Republican, I'm a former Republican. You're consulting with the DCCC right now. I don't know if you can say this, but have you noticed a cultural difference? Like Republicans, I've said this before. When I ran, I didn't run to win by 1 percentage point. I ran to get every vote, to get every dollar, and make sure that person would never, ever think about running against me again. It was total political warfare. Now, we played clean, but it was really rough. And it was an obsession.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Democrats, not a lot of Democrats with that intensity. Is there a cultural divide between how Democrats and Republicans run?
You know, I think that the biggest difference, certainly that I've observed, is that Republicans truly, they don't care if something is 100% right, 100% accurate, 100% factual. And Democrats really do care about the truth. And I think that it surprises them. I've had many Democrats ask me, do Republicans really not care? And my answer is, no, they don't care. They want to win. They want to pound you into submission. They don't care what it takes, how ugly it gets, how nasty it gets. They're going to do whatever they got to do.
Well, and let me just add on to this. Like, I will say, in my experience, Democrats think they're right and everybody else is wrong. The Democrats that I've been around at times, that's not great when you're campaigning. Like, it's sort of like, we always talk about DBT, and you've got to open your mind and go, well, maybe some people listen to these Republicans, and maybe they think that they're right. Maybe they actually think, how am I going to beat them?
Right. And I think part of the challenge is, on the surface...
By the way, please don't tweet at me. I didn't say that skillfully. I'm just saying, but
no, I know what you're saying.
I've sunk now. I was trying to help, but I think I've just blown.
Let me help bail Joe out here. I think...
Please tell me.
I think part of it is, on the surface, Democrats believe that, hey, we are right about a lot of these things. We are the party that is for democracy. We are the party that is for social justice, inequality. And the Republicans are 100% not. But that in itself is not enough to win. It's not enough to be right. You have to convince the American people that there's something in it for them. Republicans are very good. In fact, the Republicans are better at Democrats in this, of using fear and weaponizing fear to get ahead electorally. And I think that Democrats are going to be a lot more aggressive in 2022. I think that Democrats are understanding that the stakes are so much higher now, that literally democracy is on. We had a violent insurrection, and Republicans are out there. The law and order Republicans are out there saying, it was just a tourist thing.
And so, Adrian, this is the thing. And so I guess I was like thinking like a Democrat going into the Trump election, because I thought, all right, this is very simple. This is
Yeah.
democracy versus a guy who's got fascist tendencies. He's trying to get his attorney general to arrest his opponent.
Yeah.
He's the guy's like calling the free press enemies of the people. He's trying to get some members of the press thrown in jail and executed. This is easy. He gets 75 million votes.
Yeah.
Obviously, I missed something last time.
Yeah.
So talk about how important it is, sort of the meat and potato issues. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
a lot of Americans are like, okay, so am I going to be able to pay my bills? Is my street going to be safe? Is inflation going up? Is it going down?
Well, that's really what it comes down to, Joe. And let's not forget about the Access Hollywood tape, too. We thought the 2016 campaign, and when that came out, it's over. It's a done deal. But it really does come down to how does this vote, how does electing this person affect my everyday life, right? And that's why I think Democrats right now are doing such a good job on drawing a contrast on a lot of issues that do affect the lives of everyday people. I mean, the child tax credit, for example, huge thing that's going to hit mailboxes in mid-July. Democrats are really playing that up, and they are making sure that the American people know this was a Biden-Harris accomplishment. This did not just happen because these checks magically appeared. So you've got to make it clear. You've got to really drive in the point. What are you doing to affect the lives of everyday people? Same with infrastructure. I mean, I saw Josh Gottheimer, my old friend from the Clinton White House days, on earlier, talking about the Problem Solvers Caucus and how they're trying to work together on this. But that's what Democrats have to do. They've got to keep driving home those issues that affect the lives of everyday people. When I worked at the DCCC in 2006, Rahm Emanuel was the chair. We ran on culture of corruption, Jack Abramoff, big lobbyist. I think those days are over. I don't know that we can run on Washington is corrupt anymore as the single issue. You've got to get down to what affects those families who are voting in this election.
And as far as taking credit, Eugene, of course, Republicans, a lot of Republican congressmen are taking credit for things they voted against. That's something Democrats need to call out.
Well, we have social media in this election in ways that we didn't, in 10 years ago, and people are being fact-checked in ways that they never have before. Beating media organizations at fact-checking and calling out lawmakers for saying that they did things that they really didn't do. And so I don't think that's going to happen and be as successful as it perhaps has been in the past. People will be held accountable just because we've seen it happen so far already.
Yeah, Casey, you have a question for the DCCC chairman?
I do indeed. Congressman, it's good to see you. My question is about how what's going on in Congress ties into these races that you've got to run. Bernie Sanders says he wants to potentially spend $6 trillion in an environment where inflation is a real concern. You're also talking about raising taxes. You've got suburban voters that are relying on stocks going up to protect their 401ks. Is spending $6 trillion
divide. We're going to fix, they want to fight. You better believe it. And if you look at what happened in that specialized in distortions about what we stand for, we blew the doors off. And all the smart people in this town said we'd be lucky to win by 10. Our candidate won by 25. And she stood for something on issues of racial justice, but she also talked about what she was for with specifics, responded to their lies, but also ran on the record of this administration, which actually matters more than these Washington issues. What matters is whether the pandemic is in the rearview mirror, whether the economy's growing, people are making money, feeling good and safe in their homes. That's what we're going to deliver on, and that's the national message.
All right.
It's interesting you guys didn't get into a big fight.
Oh, come on. It's not as fun.
The soothing blue color makes everything just
jump across the table and separate.
Why do I need to get into a fight? Why does he need to fight me when I blow myself up early on?
I do appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be going ducking.
All right.
The source of your Twitter trouble today.
Yes, no, it's all me.
Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, thank you. Eugene Scott, Adrian Elrod, Kurt Bardella, thank you all as well. Thank you, Casey. That does it for us this morning. Stephanie Rule picks up the coverage right now.
Hi there, I'm Stephanie Rule. It's Wednesday, June 23rd, and the battle is not over yet. Vice President Kamala Harris and Senate Democrats vowing to continue the fierce fight for voting rights in this country after Republicans blocked debate on the legislation late Tuesday following a 50-50 party line vote, which is far short of the 60-vote supermajority needed to move forward, at least temporarily shutting down one of President Biden's top domestic priorities to override the wave of restrictive new voting laws that has been sweeping across the country.
If senators 60 years ago held that the federal government should never intervene to protect voting rights, this body would have never passed the Voting Rights Act. The Republican leader uses the language and the logic of the Southern senators in the 60s who defended states' rights, and it is an indefensible position.
There is no effort in any state in America to suppress votes based upon suppression of minority participation. What this is really about is an effort for the federal government to take over the way we conduct elections in this country.
I've got the best team of experts here to help make sense of all of this. Sahil Kapoor on Capitol Hill, Jeff Bennett at the White House, and Victoria DeFrancesco Soto. Sahil, Democrats say this thing isn't over, but it sure seems like it is. What can they do next?
Options here. Plan A for progressive supporters of this bill was to unify the Senate Democrats behind it and get that 50-50 vote, and then hope that enough Democrats support nuking the filibuster, that 60-vote threshold, to push it through. That has quite simply not happened. There are several holdouts who are not budging on the 60-vote threshold, including one, Kirsten Sinema, who is a co-sponsor of this bill. Plan B was to win 10 Republican votes in the Senate, and that simply isn't happening because there aren't 10 Republicans for the taking. You heard Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader there, say that the federal government simply does not need to weigh in on this at all. They're happy to let the states handle it. They don't believe the restrictive voting laws pursued in places like Georgia and Texas are problematic. They're fine with them. So what can Democrats do at this point if they have 50 votes, if there's a filibuster in place and 10 Republicans are not willing to do a major voting rights bill? They just don't have good options. They need a bigger majority to pass a major voting rights bill. That isn't happening anytime soon. There is some glimmer of hope on the issue of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. There's at least one Republican who's supporting it, Lisa Murkowski. I spoke to another yesterday, Senator Roy Blunt of Missouri. He's retiring. He said he was open to an updated formula by which states have to pre-clear voting laws and changes with the federal government. But that's 2 right now. Getting to 10 continues to be a huge slog for Democrats, and it's not clear they have much of a path at this moment.
Victoria, yesterday was this admirable, but they actually need to win this battle. How do they beat Mitch McConnell? You could say he's the worst ever, but he's really good at this.
You know, picking up what Haid said, I think we really need to focus on the John Lewis Act. Right now, there's 2 Republicans who are leaning for supporting the act. I think that here the focus has to be on Chuck Schumer working to get those remaining 8. We know that the difference between the For the People Act and the John Lewis Act is really one, the first one being more proactive. The Republicans pushed back at that one from the get-go. The John Lewis Act is more reactive. It reinstates what we had accepted as a nation for over 50 years in the Voting Rights Act. So for me, I know it may seem like a far stretch, but I think getting those extra 8 Republicans to back the John Lewis Act is really that glimmer of hope for Democrats and, quite frankly, for the nation.
Okay, Sahil, let's go with an even farther stretch. Let's take ourselves out of partisanship. Republicans claim this whole thing is a partisan power grab. Voting rights shouldn't be about politics. They should be about democracy. What is actually in the meat of this thing? What is at stake?
Stephanie, the issue is whether Congress does something to set national guidelines for how all 50 states need to conduct their elections. There are core provisions of this bill, S1, HR1, also known as the For the People Act, that would, for instance, make Election Day a federal holiday in all 50 states for elections. It would require at least 15 days of early voting in every state. It would allow universal access to mail-in votes. Some of this stuff was, in place during the pandemic, and Democrats argue that it's necessary to protect ballot access down the line. Republicans just have a very different view of this. They believe that states should run their elections. They believe that these restrictive voting laws in places like Florida and Georgia, as I was mentioning, are okay, that they're not designed to suppress votes. And I actually asked Senator Roy Blunt about this yesterday. Republicans support voter ID. They're big supporters of that. I asked him, would you support a national voter ID law? He said no, because even though he supports the policy, he wants states to run that. So that gives you a sense of the lack of Venn diagram overlap between the two parties on the issue of voting rights in Congress. How do they get 10 Republicans to support a federal elections bill when most of them don't even believe the federal government should be involved at all? That's the biggest challenge here, Stephanie, for Democrats.
Victoria, none of this sounds super partisan, but does that even matter if the majority of people out there don't actually know what's in it?
Right. And in looking at how far we've come, right? I'm at the LBJ school. LBJ was the father of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. It really is surprising to see that we have had forward movement over the last several decades, and in the last couple of years, we've been moving back. So I think the messaging to the American people, you don't want to get into the weeds, right? That's political strategy 101. But I think in outlining the big picture here, the fortifying of democracy, especially in light of what we saw in January, and letting folks know that this is about protecting democracy and reminding folks as well that the fact that we have seen very little to no evidence of voter fraud is very important to keep hammering home. Republican governors in Florida and Texas, those who have been pushing for voting restrictions, have themselves said that the 2020 election was one of the safest ever. So I think letting the people know that voter fraud is not an issue and that we need to protect our democracy and hammer that home day and night.
Jeff, Vice President Kamala Harris certainly knows how to rock a podium. She did it again last night. Watch this.
This is about the American people's right to vote, unfettered. It is about their access to the right to vote in a meaningful way. But the bottom line is that the president and I are very clear. We support S1. We support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And the fight is not over.
Okay, Jeff, boom, there you have it. Killer soundbite. But does the president actually have anything up his sleeve? Does he have the power to do something here?
To give it to you straight, Steph, no. I mean, the Senate math is what it is, as Sahil laid out. The Senate filibuster is what it is. And so what we're seeing in real time are the limits of the power of presidential persuasion. The fact that a Washington veteran like Joe Biden, President Biden, didn't invest more of his political capital on this specific issue, I think, shows that he knew it was doomed to fail, at least in the short term. And that's one of the reasons why you have all of this progressive anger and frustration growing, given the ways in which this White House talks about this existential threat versus the ways that they are sort of devoting time and resources to it. And case in point, yesterday, after the vote failed, this test vote failed, the administration put out a statement, a policy statement, where they said this: democracy is in peril here in America. The right to vote, a sacred right in this country, is under assault with an intensity and an aggressiveness we have not seen in a long time. Yet, at the same time, there are Democrats who say that President Biden didn't throw everything at this in a way that he could have. He didn't tour the country trying to drum up support in the same way that he did for infrastructure. The White House, meantime, has really tried to recalibrate expectations here and saying the fact that the Democratic caucus in the Senate was united on this, that was an important first step. And the president also put out a statement last night where he said that this fight is far from over. He's devoted his life, he says, to this issue of equal access to the ballot box. And so he says this fight is not yet done, Steph.
All right, well, we'll be watching, and you will be covering it. Jeff Bennett, Victoria DeFrancesco Soto, Sahil Kapoor. Developing now in Washington, also, President Biden set to take on violence, gun violence, head on. In just hours, he will unveil a 5-step strategy to respond to the nation's surge in gun violence over the last year. Joining us now with the details, my colleague Monica Alba and retired NYPD Detective Mark Claxton. Monica, you got an early look at the president's proposal. What's in it?
So after meeting with some key stakeholders this afternoon, Steph, the president's proposal, what's in it? So after meeting with some key stakeholders this afternoon, Steph, the president's proposal, what's in it? So after meeting with some key stakeholders this afternoon, Steph, the president's proposal, what's in it? Secondary consequences, they say, from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, our moms became close friends really fast. He was my best friend, my confidant, my support, my comfort. I looked at him and could see our future together. God, I'm even crying remembering one time we took a blanket, went outside, and looked up at the stars like in some book. I never thought something like this could happen to me. The man I loved could have never done anything like that to me. It all started about 2 months ago. His ex, high school sweetheart, together 7 years, moved back to our country and wanted to catch up with Mark too, fake name. He told me they broke up because they were unable to sustain a long-distance relationship when she left to pursue postgraduate studies. They hadn't been in contact for about 5 years. She sent him an email. He showed it to me and it was completely platonic. He asked me if he could meet her and I said yes. I trusted him. So he went. But when he came back...
In 1,000 feet, turn left on Tillery Street.
Dismissive when I asked him how it went, etc., I let it go. However, the following weeks he was often on his phone. He picked random fights with me and didn't look me in the eyes when we're intimate. Didn't whisper loving words either. I'm really touchy/clingy, and in our 3 years together he had never once recoiled or refused my embrace. But he started doing it. I usually hug him like a koala when he comes back home from work. I'm a bit childish, I know. But he only let me do it twice. It was such a sudden change. I asked him what was wrong, but he just said he wasn't feeling.
Turn left on Tillery Street.
I went to visit his grandma as we usually knit together. She taught me, and I was gone the whole day. I feel really close to her because she adopted me easily and reminds me of my own who died when I was in high school. When I came back, I found him packing his stuff. The whole world fell apart. He was being so cowardly. He told me he was sorry for making me suffer like this, but sometimes life gives you a second chance and you have to recognize it for what it is. That he loved me, but when he met his ex, he realized the feelings weren't the same. He said he regretted letting go of her, that he had found himself again, that it had been a difficult choice for him, but he had to take this chance. His ex wanted him back. She had realized what she had lost and risked losing for good when he told her he was getting married. He supposedly refused her at first, but as time passed and they talked together, his old feelings came back. He hoped I would forgive him one day and understand. I cried as he was talking. It sounds stupid, but it was as if it was a stranger in front of me. He said he would still pay rent and part of the bills until our lease was up and I can find another place. He makes a lot more than me and I wouldn't be able to afford living in our apartment on my own. I begged him not to make this mistake, that he was being fooled by an idealized...
In 700 feet, turn right on J Street.
But he was like a wall. He didn't even look at me. At about 10 p.m.
Turn right on J Street.
His friends waiting for him. He apparently came to help him move. I wasn't really close with that particular friend, but he did seem sorry for me. Mark hugged me goodbye and left. I hadn't cried that hard in years. I slept in our spare room not to feel the emptiness of our room with his things gone. I sunk to the deepest pathetic and tried to call him, but it went to voicemail. I had no idea where he went, but assumed he was now living with his ex after 3 weeks of talking again. How ridiculous.
In a quarter of a mile, use the left lane to turn left on Sand Street, Center Roadway.
Home with them, but I wasn't ready to leave. Mark is a bit messy and I'm a manic, so it felt weird having everything perfectly neat. I missed his messiness. It was as if he was the one making our house a home. He used to joke about me wanting the house to look like it was on sale or in a catalog. Not waking up to make breakfast, not seeing him read lying on the sofa while I studied felt weird. Not buying his favorite snack or powder proteins when doing groceries felt weird. I felt really lost at first. It was like grieving. Usually when people break up, their relationship was going south, but to me it came out of nowhere. I still loved him. I was still planning the wedding and working on my side to build our future together. It was all gone in a day. I wish I had been smarter and refused he meet as one that got away. His family was dumbfounded. I still went to see his grandma and she told me he was a fool, that he would come back crawling to me. She was the first person who managed to make me laugh. His mom, my mom and I started making calls to cancel all reservations. Luckily the store accepted to take back the dress.
In 900 feet, turn right on Cadman Plaza West.
He had been gone for about 3 weeks.
Speed camera ahead.
Furious with him, so I didn't contact him much. The only contact I had with him was the signed check he made to cover the wedding cancellation. However, about a week ago, I received a letter from him. He apologized for leaving me like this. Said he made the biggest mistake of his life. That he couldn't even believe what he had done. That he was writing me this letter because he didn't have the courage to face me. You were right, I was running after a perfect relationship that had never existed. I regret it so much. I thought I was in love with her, but in reality, I was in love with what she represented. My younger self with no responsibility and only dreams. I had cold feet and got afraid of moving forward into this new segment of my life. I couldn't stop thinking about you when I was with her. She is not you. She doesn't know me or loves me like you. She doesn't smell like you. I missed hearing you sing randomly throughout the day. I missed having someone nagging me to pick up my stuff. I missed planning Halloween parties for the kids with you. At the time I'm writing this letter, we would have probably been decoration shopping had I not been a fool. Everyone told me, but I was being a blind fool. I would do anything to go back in the past and slap some sense into myself. I would do anything for you to forgive me. I know we have already started canceling everything, but I'm ready to pay for everything myself. You can date someone else to even scores if you want, as long as you come back.
Turn right on Cadman Plaza West.
I just gave the important parts. He kept on with apologies and begging me to forgive him. Now I told my family, left friends out for the moment, and his mom and grandma. Grandma had a very satisfying told you so moment. However, she is rooting me to forgive him. His mom was supposed to send a formal letter to guests to tell them the wedding was off, but now is waiting for my answer. I don't know what to do. I love him with all my heart, but what he did to me, I don't know if I can get over it. He made me feel worthless. He threw me away as if I was no one to him after 3 years. He gave up on us for some ghost from his past when we were at our happiest. If he can leave me when we're doing good, how will we sustain a marriage? Will he leave the moment things get hard? He hurt me so badly and expect me to forgive him? He wants us to meet on Sunday, but I'm not sure I'm willing to.
In a quarter of a mile, keep right to Prospect Street.
Now for the top advice before reading the update. Just a thought. How do you know that the old girlfriend didn't call it off, sending him back to pick up the pieces? Definitely don't be second choice. The right people don't need second chances. You deserve much more. Haven't seen this mentioned much.
In 1,000 feet, keep right, then turn right.
She probably just wanted to see if she could make him do it, or said all that thinking he wouldn't actually do it, and had no intention of being in a relationship at this time. There is no freaking way OP's ex decided to throw their engagement and happiness away.
Keep right, then turn right on Prospect Street.
Later he decided to leave the ex and come crawling back. Just no freaking way. He got dumped by some witch who never really wanted him back. What a complete joke of a man. Pathetic. OP, my heart.
Turn right on Prospect Street.
But please, never ever accept being second choice. He doesn't deserve you. You'll never be able to trust that he won't do this again someday. Believe me, you do not want to live with that paranoia. Do not take him back. Tell him sorry. Life isn't giving you a second chance at this. Then find someone who will never ever crush you like that. Now I'm the one.
In 700 feet. Turn right on Pearl Street. Then turn right.
This is the smartest thing to do, but I'm having a hard time doing it. I even try to rationalize his actions, but I guess it would be best to just separate for good. Do you want to spend a lifetime with a man who is always thinking the grass is greener in other pastures? Temporary pain is better for good. Do you want to spend a lifetime with a man who is always thinking the grass is greener in other pastures? Temporary pain is better than a lifetime of worry. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life with a person who managed to throw away 3 years because of the newfound absolute intense feelings he got for his ex over 5 minutes of coffee? The mere speed at which he threw away their relationship and their engagement is astounding as much as it's upsetting. And now for the update. I didn't plan on updating, or at least not so soon, but I have another problem. I'm really thankful to everyone who answered and comforted me. You guys gave me the strength to look forward and not make a decision based on nostalgia. I felt really alone in my pain, but thanks to you I felt a little less lonely. So Mark wanted to meet on Sunday, but I unblocked him from my phone and told him I didn't want to meet, and to please not contact me anymore. He answered, "Please baby, I need to talk to you, can we meet another day? I know I messed up really bad and hurt you deeply, but I'll do anything to make it up to you, anything you ask I'll do it." Needless to say, it just angered me more. How dare he use terms of endearment with me? I just blocked him again after that. I met his mom on Saturday and told her to proceed with the notification of cancellation. We had an emotional moment and she told me even though she would have really wanted us to stay.
Turn right on Pearl Street. Then turn right to Brooklyn Bridge.
Forgive him, but she understands. And so the wedding is indeed still being canceled. My poor brother, I told him personally, had already bought his plane tickets from Australia and got a refund. I rearranged all the furniture in the house and bought new bedding sets to make a new start and moved to the spinner room for good. It looks really different and I like it. Apparently we told our friends because some brought it up to me, asking if we are getting back together, but said they didn't want to sign.
Turn right to Brooklyn Bridge.
People coming this late usually. It was around 9 p.m. When I went to look through the people I saw Mark, with his ex. I seriously had a moment of panic. He must still have the key for the main entry since he managed to get to my door without using the intercom. I don't know if it was a coward thing to do, but I just chose not to open. I know they knew I was there and I heard him ask me to please let him in, that he just wanted to talk through the door. Honestly, even though I feel better, I don't think I'm emotionally stable enough to deal with him and especially him with his ex. They stayed about 15 minutes and then they left. I thought he would get the message, but they came again yesterday around the same time. And I didn't open again. They waited even longer. I know I'm not being an adult. So now I don't know what to do. I feel nervous in my own house because I dread the moment they'll come back. He knows my schedule and he came at the time where I usually come back for my Zumba class. However, yesterday was a holiday, so we didn't have class. I'm afraid he will come again and I don't think I can face him. What should I do? I know I can't run away forever, but I need more time. Is this worth calling the police over? I fear it would make the problem bigger than it is and hurt our family relations. Our moms are really close. And really he is not dangerous, I think. He didn't contact me enough for it to be considered harassment anyway. Should I just be a big girl and open the next time he or they come? Or do I wait it out? Also, why the hell is he bringing her? I'm curious, but I want to stand by my decision. Leave a note taped to your door. Write his name on the exterior of the envelope. The note should read, "While I appreciate your efforts to contact me, I have been explicit in telling you that we are over. I do not know what you feel you need to say to me, but I know that I do not want to hear it. Please do not return here, and do not contact me again. Feel free to leave the key to enter our complex on the doormat. If you come back, I will call the police. Problem solved. I will try that. Maybe he doesn't know I cannot call the police."
In 3/4 of a mile. Exit to FDR Drive North.
To be there. Currently him coming is not even considered harassment by the law. Make use of his family connections. Call his mom. Explain that he has dropped by and didn't want him to stop. Tell her that he has come by your place twice already, but you did not want to talk to him or let him in. To come by your home. If there's a third visit, you will be forced to pursue a restraining order and you would rather not have to go the road. Also worth mentioning that he was with the girl when he dropped by. My bet is that he thinks you talking to her will persuade you that he likely thinks the reason you will not take him back is because you do not believe that the relationship is over. The reality is that you will never take him back because he shattered the trust.
In 1,000 feet, use the right 2 lanes to exit right. Then keep right.
Finding a new apartment. If you are locked into a lease, talk with your landlord and explain that you have an ex who keeps coming around even after he's been told not to. Lots of landlords have more than one of them.
Exit right. Then use either lane to keep right to FDR Drive North.
On more than one occasion. I cannot pursue a risk.
Use either lane to keep right to FDR Drive North.
His mom, but I doubt he would listen honestly, and I don't want to drag her into this business. I can see how he would think it might help. But honestly, just imagining having to sit with them both makes me uncomfortable. I would have to look at them and think about what they did to my life, and it would just cause me distress. My landlord isn't exactly the friendly type, so I don't know if I can bring personal issues like this as a reason. Most likely he would ask for a meeting with the both of us, and in the best case it would take about 3 months, as it is the minimum time required to notify our landlord about our desire to end the lease earlier before we can move. I definitely need to look for a new apartment though. You have absolutely no obligation to sit with either of them. Tell his mother that one of you needs to move out of the apartment and pay the rent remaining left on the lease, and that you think it should be him. Arrange a time that your ex can come to the apartment and get all of his things. Don't be there for that. Then inform the landlord that he has moved out and that you will be the sole person on the lease from here on out. Now for the last story. It does get better. It might take a very long time, but it does get better. My advice at the end. Just came across this sub because it's still COVID and I'm bored. Long story short, met my ex at 20. We both immediately had a thing for each other. First real love. At 20.
Continue straight for 15 minutes to Harlem River Drive North, George Washington Bridge.
For over a year with a married man with a child. One day, she basically goes, oh, and a cherry on the cake. She does all this before I get the permit to stay in the country she's from, where I have been living for the past 12 years. So, I can't even go back to the place I had spent the longest of my life. It was hell. I never suffered as much in my life. I never drank as much in my life. I hated everything, was self-empty. Thought of her every day. She was the love of my life, right? I mean, we still talk relatively regularly. But, things slowly started getting better. By the age of 37, I was no longer miserable, but far from being happy. The fact I hated my job and lived in another country I wasn't so keen on didn't help. Still drank a lot, but less than before. One day at 39, I decided to leave and live another adventure and do something I always dreamed of doing, moving to the literal heart of Africa, not Mali. I had the time of my life. And more importantly, I started realizing that women, awesome women, were genuinely into me. Slowly, I start rebuilding my self-esteem. Drink like a normal person. Started working out. 10 months ago, a bit before turning 41, I met someone. Someone who is quite literally awesome, in the Lara Croft sort of way. She latches onto me. I'm a bit confused, although I gave out a lot of self-esteem, still had downs. She quickly makes it crystal clear she wants me to be her what. Oddly, the thought doesn't frighten me. Sounds enticing. A few months afterwards, I get a message from my ex. We hadn't exchanged in almost 2 years. She was following me on social media and wanted to have a quick catch-up. I agree and we talked for 2 hours. I feel nothing. Even stranger, I feel pity for her. She's nothing like the person I remember. In fact, the future I have with my girl is much richer, fulfilling, fun, and generally awesome than what I would have had with my ex. Everybody has to go through this grief in their own way, but my advice: don't drink, go to the gym instead. Do what it is you always wanted to do but couldn't because you were in the relationship. The sweetest revenge, if that is what you want, is when this person sees you living your dreams. Now for the top comments. Thanks for sharing. It's nice hearing stories just like mine coming out better. Just found out love of my life, or I thought, was sleeping with someone the last 10 months. I keep telling myself I have to let go and move on. But this emotional side of my brain is just stuck in the fantasy that we were going to end up together forever. For crying and begging for forgiveness aren't helping. I'll try to focus on posts like this though. I'm sorry to hear what you're going through. Can I ask, did you find out? Thanks for replying. There's not even a straightforward answer to that question, but short answer is yes, she confessed. Sort of. It was after I caught her on an unrelated light. I asked if there's anything else at all she needs to tell me. She then revealed that she signed up for a dance competition last year and has just been seeing and practicing with her dance partner the last 3 months. But she swears that's it. There's nothing more. She just felt bad about not telling me and wanted to come clean. But after 4 days of more questions, holes in her stories, she finally admits it started last autumn. She had feelings, and they had slipped, but the ex ended last year. Honestly, I am almost certain that the affair has continued up until now, but I was too devastated to push anymore and haven't spoken with her again since, just 1 day ago. Long story short, your life is so much better and your ex remains miserable. Good job and good luck on your new girl. She seems into you. Ain't that interesting that at the end of the day most cheaters are more miserable than betrayed partners? Thank you for sharing your story. My ex-boyfriend did the same thing to me, and during the last that we met, I didn't feel anything at all. That was the time when I realized that I did not love him anymore and that I'm doing better.
Welcome to r/pro-revenge, where OP takes down her toxic manager for sexual harassment. Our next Reddit post is from Gadgets Only. My ex is an abusive pile of garbage, and we had a kid together. I left him while I was pregnant, but I would occasionally take the baby to see him on his lunch hour. He paid us $29 a month in child support for a very long time. I got that amount reviewed when he was hired, and that climbed to $89 a month. When my ex found out that his child support payments had increased by $70 a month, he temper tantrum in his work, and he chased me and our 9-month-old kid out of the building. We had family court a few days later, and he blamed me for everything. He even got his friend to lie and say that he was there and that I started that fight. Thankfully, the judge didn't believe him, but I was forced to continue making these terrible visits to my ex's work. Now for the revenge. He worked at a furniture rental store, and he would constantly badmouth customers in very detailed ways. The next time I took my baby to his work, I sat down with a small notepad and wrote down the names he said, how many months they said they were behind, how much they said they owed, and every terrible name that he and his buddy called the customers. There were quite a few racial slurs said that day. When my ex left for the day, I told his boss, but his boss didn't do anything. However, I personally knew 3 of the people he was bad-mouthing, and I knew how to get in touch with 5 or so others. I worked my way through that list, telling people exactly how their personal financial info was being released and the names they were called. He and his buddy lost their jobs the next day, and the owner filed a restraining order against them. I didn't feel bad at all. Jeez, OP, he was upset about $89 a month. I don't even know if he can keep a dog alive at $89 a month, let alone a baby. Our next Reddit post is from Directed Accordingly. When I was 19, I worked in a one-man store in my local area. Sure, there were a lot of entitled people that came in, but there were also absolutely lovely regulars that I bonded with. Unfortunately, what happened in this story didn't involve one of the nice regulars, but instead a creepy older man. This man was probably in his 40s, dirty, and just an outright creep. The shop didn't have any panic buttons, so when he came in, I was on my own. He was a pervert who would just come in to harass me. He would lean over the counter to stroke my arms, make disgusting derogatory comments towards me, and try to feel me up any time I left the counter. I hated working there because of this guy. I reported him to the manager multiple times, but nothing was ever done. I even showed him the CCTV, but again, nothing would happen. One day, the guy came in saying extremely lewd things to me and tried to grab my chest. I just snapped. I shoved him away from me, telling him to leave the store, and that if he didn't stop, I would report him to the cops. The guy just laughed at me and said there was nothing I could do, until I pointed at the cameras. This enraged the guy, and he told me how he knew that I lived in the area, so if he ever found me, he would do to me. He left. I was absolutely terrified. I knew this guy was ex-military, and he could easily overpower me. After that, he came to the store displaying what looked like a weapon, and he followed me when I visited local stores. On a shift swap, I nervously came into my work as the manager was cashing in his till. He saw me and asked what was wrong, and I told him what was happening. I said that I had to report this guy to the cops, but I needed evidence, so I mentioned CCTV. My manager responded, "I'm so sorry, but I'm afraid you can't do that. If you do, then they'll do a background check on you, and I'll have to tell them everything that I know about you." This terrified me even more. The manager was a friend of mine and the reason that I got that job to begin with. He knew that I had home problems, so he was basically telling me that he would tell the cops about it and rip my family apart. He said, "See, I value you as a friend, but after seeing your true colors when you refuse to go out with me, it kind of tells me to be honest to the police. Do you really want to involve them?" It became evident that the reason why he never handled my complaints before is because I rejected him. He asked me out a few times, which I rejected, but I didn't think much of it. As scared as I was, I didn't want my I wasn't going to go out with him just to get some evidence. Instead, I started to plot my revenge against the manager. The area manager and my manager were good friends. The area manager let my manager get away with anything during inspections, but rumor had it that the area manager was moving to a different location. This meant that a new area manager would be coming in to do an inspection. Knowing this, I patiently waited to see if it was true. One day I went in and saw a man that I'd never seen before. It was the new area manager, and he was in doing an inspection when the manager wasn't there. It turns out that he had met my manager before, and he didn't like him one bit, so he was trying to find evidence to fire him. He told me that he wanted to monitor the daily things I did in the shop, so I did the things badly. I made sure to screw up every chance I got. Not scanning items, not checking IDs, stocking things incorrectly, etc. The area and asked if I was ever trained. Luckily, my dad always encouraged me to keep a log of everything I do at work. So I gave the area manager my log of the week that I started and the day that I signed that document, telling him that all he had to do was check the cameras, which of course he did. When he found out that I was never trained, he sat me down and asked what other things my manager was doing wrong. I told him everything. That he made me and my coworker take over a shift so he could leave early. How he never fulfilled requests for holidays and took them away last minute. And how he would never process official complaints and would persuade us not to report incidents. He asked me what kind of incidents, and I told him about the customer and how he blackmailed me not to report it to the cops. I told him how he said the only way that he was going to help me is if I dated him. The area manager was disgusted and asked if I had logs of all the relevant dates to prove what I was doing. I handed him my logbook and said that I felt awful telling him all this because I didn't want anyone to get in trouble. That was a lie. Of course I wanted results. The area manager reassured me that nothing was going to happen to me. He just never came into work and he knew that I was there instead. I asked where the manager was and I was told that he got fired. It turned that he thought was just about how he managed the store, but it was actually a lot more serious than that. He wasn't just pulled up on what happened with me, but it was revealed that he was falsifying paperwork and falsifying his hours. He was stealing money from the store. So he was subsequently fired for falsifying documents, mistreating staff, abusing his power, and stealing. And in regards to the stealing, they actually took him to court. The area manager used everything that I said against him. I quit a little bit after that, but I have a great relationship with the new manager. He's a kind, professional man. I also moved, so I never had to see that customer again. I checked social media, and my old manager had blocked me on everything. Personally, I haven't heard from him since, but I heard that he claims that I'm lying and that I was a spiteful B-word. At least he wasn't entirely wrong. I am a spiteful B-word. OP, this guy absolutely had that coming to him. You got sexually harassed at work, and his response to that was to sexually harass you at work? What an absolute garbage can human being. Our next Reddit post is from Bill Young. A few years ago, after changing jobs, I found myself in a new office with a new phone number. After orientation, training, and other new hire stuff, I finally get to sit down and start working. I get my voicemail and answering machine set up the email, and my phone rings. I say, "Good morning."
In half a mile, Use any lane to continue on Harlem River Drive North, George Washington Bridge. Then keep left.
Seriously, when can I take the GED test? Like I said, wrong number. Bye. This went on for weeks, 15 to 20 calls per day. People would scream at me for not being. One day I had an epiphany. A caller called in. This isn't the. Nope. Do you know the number? Check Google. I did, but this is the number on their website. Oh, really? After Google.
Continue straight. Then use the left 2 lanes to keep left to Harlem River Drive North, George Washington Bridge.
I'm just gonna have to deal with it. My favorite line from that conversation was, "What are you gonna do about it? I work for the state. You can't do sh**. Bye-bye."
Use the left 2 lanes to keep left to Harlem River Drive North, George Washington Bridge.
Oh, hell no. Let's dance. The next day I answered the phone. Good morning, this is OP speaking.
In 2.7 miles. Take exit 24, I-95 South, US 1 South, George Washington Bridge, Amsterdam Avenue, West 179th Street.
Budget cuts, you know. Oh, I get it. I'll see you in a bit. Take your time. They don't like me telling you this, but if you get here before we close, they have to give you the test. See you when you get here. Thanks, man. See you later. Now, for those of you who don't know, a GED test takes an entire day to finish. It also usually costs upward of $100 depending on the state. In my state, it was around $200. As such, it was only offered at certain intervals. So, since I was telling dozens of people each day that it was $10, took 90 minutes, and offered on request, I'm sure they were absolutely inundated with angry people with freshly sharpened number 2 pencils, waving their $10 bills, and demanding the test that the guy on the phone told them they could come in and take. Every morning I checked the website to see if my phone number was still on there. I also took the liberty of calling around and getting the phone numbers from some managers. I was happy to hand out those phone numbers when people would call back to complain that they weren't allowed to take the test. I told them, just head back down there and ask to speak to a random director's name. Tell them you called the number on the website and this is what you were told. It took them about 6 more weeks to change the website. For some reason, all the managers' numbers disappeared from the website as well. Down in the comments, we had this story from Curmudgeon. Many years ago, I rented a house where the previous owners had been a couple of doctors out front from the River. They got an absolute ton of junk mail when they moved. They thought they were being clever and only selectively filed IP notices. Well, their junk mail keep going out in my mailbox. I called them and asked them to file with the post office to forward all their junk mail. They told me their F off. So I started writing deceased on all mail that came to them and tossing it back in the mailbox. About 6 months later, I got a very angry phone call from them because apparently one of the pieces of mail was from Harvard for their 10-year reunion. Because I'd written deceased on the mail, they were listed as dead on the Where Are They Now?
In half a mile. Use the left 2 lanes to exit left.
NCP. My friend moved to a new home in college and got a new phone number. A few months later, he started getting phone calls from pregnant women who wanted to schedule an appointment with a gynecologist. After several such calls, he found the actual gynecologist and contacted their office. It turns out they had new stationery and cards printed, and they all had a misprint of the phone number, listing my friend's number instead of theirs, which was very close in number. My friend, being a decent person, told them that if they just paid the phone company's change fee, they could have his number. They said that, oh no, my friend would have to pay for that.
Exit left to exit 24, I-95 South, US 1 South, George Washington Bridge, Amsterdam Avenue, West 179th Street.
A few more days of this went by, he called them again, and they still demanded that he paid to give them his phone number because of their mistake. My friend said, I guess you're going to have to pay to get all new stationery and cards and contact every single one of your patients to tell them about your error. They laughed at him, so he hung up. After that, when someone called to make an appointment, he'd make an appointment. They would show up expecting to be seen, and the doctor's office would have to deal with these angry pregnant women. After a few weeks of this, suddenly the office called and wanted to pay the change fee. Imagine that. Oh man, I've read so many stories on r/ProRevenge where some guy gets a phone number wrong and that phone number is a business and they're like, well, not my problem, so deal with it. This is basically the equivalent of like you're sitting at your home and someone calls you and they're like, hey, do you live at 123 Fake Street? And you're like, yeah, this is my home, what about it? And the guy on the phone is like, well, I found keys to your house, so do you want to come pick them up? And then you, being a total moron, say, no, that's not my problem. I'm not going to drive across town to pick up my house keys. What do you think I am, a moron? And the guy on the phone's like, okay. And then you just have this total stranger with keys to your house. You can come in and totally screw up your stuff until you change your locks. I don't know. If you're a business owner, why would you want your phone number to go to someone who has the disposition and the power to completely destroy your business? Instead of changing, I don't know, what, probably $50, $100 to change your phone number? $15? Is that right? There's a $36 change fee with AT&T, and with T-Mobile it's $15. Oh my god. Imagine letting a bored college student utterly destroy your business because you're too cheap to pay him $15 to change your number. Oh my god. Our next Reddit post is from Dark. First off, I would like to say that this is my father's revenge, not mine, but it was one of his best. A little backstory to get you caught up. My father was a welder at a pulp and paper mill on maintenance with a union. There were about 500 people who worked there at the time. On my dad's crew, they had this guy named Squirrel because he would take anything small enough to carry and take it home. Some of the things he stole were specialized tools made for a certain machine, so they would have to be ordered again at the company's expense. I guess there wasn't much the mill could do because somehow the union backed him. It wasn't long before my father's tools started going missing too. He knew where to look, and he found them in Squirrel's toolbox and some scattered on his workbench. Squirrel was an average-sized man, about 5'9" or 5'10", but my father was a huge man, standing at 6'5" and around 250 pounds, so Squirrel didn't say a word. He was too scared to. My father...
In 900 feet. Keep right to I-95 South, George Washington Bridge.
They found many of the missing items in his locker, lunchbox, toolbox, etc. Somehow, Squirrel got the union to back him again, and he was allowed to come back to work at the end of his suspension. My father grabbed his welder and went to Squirrel's area and welded together a giant metal box. He took everything he could identify as Squirrel and put it in the box and welded a top on it. He then got the help of one of his work buddies to lift the box, and Dad welded the box to the bottom of the I-beam on the ceiling, about 20 feet in the air.
Keep right to I-95 South, George Washington Bridge.
He could borrow their tools, but no one said a word except, I take care of my tools. Maybe you should take better care of yours. This went on for a couple of hours until Squirrel went to the main office to complain, saying that someone stole all of his tools. The shop steward and Squirrel walked...
In 700 feet.
Keep left to I-95 South, US 1 South, George Washington Bridge, upper level.
Over Squirrel. My dad said something along the lines of, squirrels like to climb to store stuff. Are you sure you didn't climb the I-beam and put your stuff up there? I guess the look on the shop steward's face was almost too good, but the look of pure horror on Squirrel's face was my dad's favorite part of the story. My dad would laugh so hard when telling the story whenever he got to this part. Squirrel went to his work area and looked up. He saw the box up there. He tried to get anyone's help to get it down, but everyone seemed to have other important things to do at that moment.
Keep left to I-95 South, US 1 South, George Washington Bridge, upper level.
Again. That was r/ProRevenge, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.
1.5 miles. Take exit 74, Palisades Parkway North.
Great news.
Let's bring in Dasha Burns. She's in Mesa County, Colorado, where hospitals are close to full capacity. Dasha, half of the state's Delta variant cases are in this county. Is this all about people who are choosing not to get vaccinated? And by choosing not to get vaccinated, you're basically choosing to get sick.
Hey, Stephanie, vaccination really at the heart of things here. Colorado has the second most Delta variant cases in the U.S., the majority of them concentrated here in Mesa County. It was the first county to see the Delta variant in the state, and it is a county that lags significantly behind the rest of the state when it comes to vaccination. About 40% here vaccinated compared to 50% statewide. And look, this is a beautiful county. You can see the mountains behind me. It's a more rural area. It's freshman Congresswoman Lauren Boebert's district in a region that really prides itself on personal choice and on lack of government intervention. And in this case, though, what that translates to when it comes to vaccines and vaccine hesitancy is hospitals in this county are at about 96% capacity. And Stephanie, it feels like deja vu for me standing outside of a hospital talking about ICU capacity, talking about lack of beds. It harkens back to November. And these hospitals are seeing rates comparable to that at this point. I asked the chief nursing officer at this hospital here about what that's like to still be seeing these rates at this point in the pandemic. Take a listen to what he had to say.
I figured we would be dealing with for some point or for some period of time, maybe not to this extreme. I think, like everybody else, we would really like to see the results of the vaccine and people taking the vaccine and kind of driving down some of these admissions.
The county is really doing all it can to encourage vaccinations. They're doing mobile vaccinations. They're going to have a vaccination clinic set up at a big country music festival this weekend. But staff at these hospitals really worried and concerned about how
Watch out. Construction on road ahead.
encourage the community members to get the vaccine, Stephanie.
Want to get better? Get vaccinated. Dasha, thank you. Now let's turn to Britney Spears. She is breaking her silence today. Today marks the first
in 1,000 feet. Use the right 2 lanes to exit right.
Which allows her dad to have complete control over her life and her finances. As the New York Times reports, Britney quietly pushed for years.
Exit right 2, exit 74, Palisades Parkway North.
16 report, Britney feels, quote, the conservatorship has become an oppressive and controlling tool against her. In just a few hours, a judge is likely to rule on several major issues, including her request to have her dad permanently removed as her conservator. I want to bring in Aaron McLaughlin, who's outside the LA courthouse. Aaron, what are we expecting to hear from Britney today? Well, Stephanie, Britney Spears and her conservatorship have been the subject of endless speculation, especially by her most ardent fans. Today, we'll get to hear from the pop star herself addressing the situation in court for the first time. And legal experts say it promises to be high drama. Take a listen.
Will I ever take the stage again? I have no idea. I'm having fun right now. I'm a transition in my life.
This morning, Britney Spears expected to push for that transition in court, speaking out for the first time against her father and his control of...
Continue straight for 15 minutes to exit 9W, I-87 North, New York Thruway, I-287 West, Albany.
Britney wants him out, claiming the relationship is toxic. Her lawyer telling the court the pop star refuses to perform as long as her dad serves as her conservator. In court documents from 2016 leaked to the New York Times but not reviewed by NBC News, the superstar says the conservatorship has become an Last year, her attorney told the judge Britney was afraid of her father. While the records provide a glimpse into just a part of the court case, legal experts say at today's hearing, Britney is expected to openly air her grievances and could face cross-examination from her dad's lawyers. How difficult will it be for her to persuade them?
I think it's going to be very difficult at all. There has been a clear breakdown for over 2 years in this relationship.
Court ordered the conservatorship back in 2008 after the star was placed in 2 involuntary psychiatric holds following a public breakdown. Legally, the singer can't make any significant decisions about her career, finances, or personal life without the oversight of her conservatorship. What do we want? Earlier this year, the documentary Framing Britney Spears reignited a movement to free her. She sent cryptic messages through her Instagram videos. Reps for Britney and Jamie Spears declined our requests for comment. But earlier this year, his attorney told us Jamie Spears has diligently and professionally carried out his duties as one of Britney's conservators. And his love for his daughter and dedication to protecting her is clearly apparent to the court. Some experts believe by trying to push her father out, Britney is laying the groundwork to end all outside control of her life.
Britney, who could still work a few years ago, was making millions and millions of dollars in Las Vegas. It is extremely unusual for a conservatorship of this length to involve someone like Britney Spears.
Legal experts say a judge could rule on the status of her dad within the conservatorship within days. Stephanie?
She's 39 years old and she cannot control the color of her kitchen cabinets. I'm anxious to see what that judge has to say. Aaron, thank you for joining us and thank you for watching. That wraps up this hour. I'm Stephanie Rule. Holly Jackson picks up breaking news coverage on the other side of the break with all eyes on D.C. as we await decisions from the Supreme Court. That's coming up next.
This is Dr. Arnold T. Petsworth. Business was steady, but then more appointments and he needed more space. That's when Dr. Petsworth turned to his American Express, which offers spending potential but still fits changing business needs. He used his card to furnish a new exam room. By American Express.
This past year has felt like I know, and many of us realize fundamental human need to connect with other like-minded people. Welcome back to the world.
Viking, exploring the world in comfort once again. My plaque psoriasis, the itching, the burning.
The stinging. My skin was no longer mine.
My psoriatic arthritis made my joints stiff, swollen, painful. Emerge Tremfyant. With Tremfya, adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis can uncover clearer skin and improve symptoms at 16 weeks. Tremfya is the only medication of its kind, also approved for adults with active psoriatic arthritis.
Serious allergic reactions may occur. Tremfya can increase your risk of infections and lower your ability to fight them. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, or if you have a vaccine.
Tremfya. Emerge Tremfyant. Janssen can help you explore cost support options. Fine. No one leaves the table till you're finished.
Fine. We'll sleep here.
It's the easiest because it's the cheesiest. Kraft for the win-win.
That's my style. Noah.
And that? Greenlight's the debit card for kids. With an app and keep tabs on spending. So when Noah saved up to surprise his mom with a gift, it wasn't all that surprising. The real surprise is how smart he's learning to be with money. Join more than 3 million parents and kids at greenlightcard.com.
Used to have a gap in the front and on the side. Going through the process, my confidence was right here. Afterwards, way up there, you can't see it anymore.
Get started today at Canico.com. They're here. Seasonal favorites from Imperfect Foods, the grocery delivery service on a mission to build a better food system. Offering sustainable, affordable groceries delivered once a week. Shop now. Get 20% off your first 4 orders with code PERFECT4 at imperfectfoods.com/TV.
This morning, Pennsylvania Avenue might as well be a dead end, because right now the path forward on major issues like voting rights and infrastructure looks to be headed nowhere. Publicly, Democrats not giving up hope after that Republican filibuster in the Senate, but they're telling our team privately about what's next and when we might see new movement, with some deja vu on infrastructure all over again. White House officials meeting with Democratic leaders today, just hours after a meeting with Republicans that didn't go so great. The prospects on the pay-fors with California Senator Alex Padilla here live with us to talk about all of it as the president rolls out a new plan to fight crime in this country, with those numbers getting worse, a public safety issue and a political one. Plus, another decision day from the Supreme Court. 12 cases left, gang, including several we're watching for on voting rights and freedom of speech. As always, we have our team ready to go for any breaking developments as we get them sometime in the next couple of minutes here. Good morning, I'm Hallie Jackson in Washington, along with our NBC News team, Leanne Caldwell on Capitol Hill, O'Donnell over at the White House. We're also joined by NBC News senior reporter Jane Tim. So, Leanne, let me start with you and where things are going starting today, because this is a new day in D.C., right? Agenda really on the line. Our Democrats did clear a path on a lot of, they're continuing to. The fight is not over, that this is just the beginning, but they don't have a lot of options on this issue. They don't have 10 Republicans who are going to join them, and they don't have the Democratic votes to get rid of the filibuster. So what do they do next? Well, they keep talking about it, and that's something that they have vowed to do. Senator Amy Klobuchar, the head of the Rules Committee, has said that she's going to hold hearings in Georgia, out in the field, to bring this issue to the people, to draw attention to it. Some Democrats are even fundraising off the issue, including Senator Elizabeth Warren and Representative Tim Ryan, who there also has to be a vote for that to happen. But they think one thing that they're worried is, and this For the People Act would have addressed about that. And so Democrats are that they are running out of time, but they are also running out of options, Hallie. Kelly, what about the options at the White House, right? Where the administration goes.
Well, it is limited, and what they have leaned heavily on, Hallie, is the president's history and record this sort of issue and his career of used the bully pulpit yesterday. Now, of course, he has spoken about failed measures before, and his administration spoke about the steps he has taken. But on the day when the he did not step forward, perhaps a simple acknowledgement that it wasn't going anywhere. So the White House used a paper statement to put the president's words and views on next steps into motion. And part of what he said is here. It was the suppression of a bill to end voter suppression, another attack on voting rights that is sadly not unprecedented. I'll have more to say on this next week, but let me be clear. He goes on to say that this is not over, the fight far from over, and I've been engaged in this work my whole career, and we're going to be ramping up our efforts to overcome it again for the people and for our democracy. Similar note echoed by Vice President Kamala Harris, who of course acts as president of the Senate when she's on Capitol Hill. She and the president on the same page here. Here's how she addressed reporters after the defeat.
This is about the American people's right to vote, unfettered. It is about their access to the right to vote in a meaningful way. But the bottom line is that the president and I are very clear. We support S1. We support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And the fight is not over.
But how that fight takes a new shape going forward is still unclear from the White House, except the kinds of steps that Leanne outlined of taking the fight to a grassroots level across the country. Hallie?
Jane, the reason why Democrats feel so strongly about this and moving forward with this is because of what is happening at the state level, right? With more and more restrictions, more and more states looking at restrictions too on voting rights. And now we have some news this morning out of Texas. It's something we've talked about extensively here on this show. This issue of voting rights there. The Republican governor of that state is now holding this special legislative session to bring back a voting restrictions bill that Democrats tried to kill less than a month ago.
Yeah, Governor Greg Abbott has called it for July 8th. We will have a special session bringing the lawmakers back to Austin. And he's made it clear that voting rights is a priority. He was openly furious when Democrats blocked a restricted voting bill last month with a sort of dramatic walkout overnight over Memorial Day weekend. And it's not exactly clear whether the exact same bill that was defeated last month will come up again, or if Republicans will introduce a different version of the bill, or multiple bills in place of that sweeping standalone bill that made such headlines. But Democrats worry that it could be even worse. It's why they were in Washington last week lobbying for the People Act, which would have sort of gutted a lot of these restrictions that the Republicans have advanced. It's why they signed a letter with 480 state lawmakers across the country in many of these states where legislation has been enacted. You can see pushing, saying we are out of options, we are out of help. I mean, these are the lawmakers who are on the front lines of this fight. These are the lawmakers whose work would be the most changed by the For the People Act, which failed. And they feel like they can't hold it off any longer. I mean, Texas Democrats have been about as scrappy as you can be in defending against legislation, but that they don't have the vote. And
Also starting this morning with this new development by
This is very significant, Hallie. This is the epicenter of the sweeping January 6th case, investigations and prosecutions. We're going to get a guilty plea, according to the court docket, at 2 p.m. Eastern Time from Graydon Young of Florida, the second of 16 charged to breach the police line fence, the other accused oath keeper did. And will there be open discussion of witness protection? There was.
In 1 mile.
There's also something else that I know you're going to be watching for
To take exit 9W, I-87 North, New York Thruway, I-287 West, Albany.
Welcome to r/. Mocks a grieving mother at the funeral of her dead husband and children. Am I the butthole for going to the parents of the girl my stepsister has been bullying? My 17-year-old stepsister has been bullying this girl in our grade, Mia. Mia is a very shy person. We were never friends, but we were friendly until the bullying started, and then Mia withdrew from everyone. I found out about the bullying over a month ago. People described it as not real bullying, but my stepsister called her names and told her that she doesn't deserve friends. I found a note from my stepsister telling Mia this. I was pissed.
Exit right to exit 9W, I-87 North, New York Thruway, I-287 West, Albany.
I ended up going to Mia's parents with what I knew and the evidence of the bullying, and now it's been brought up with the school, and Mia's parents want my stepsister expelled. My dad is pissed. He said that it was so unbelievably petty and mean-spirited to go to the girl's parents over sibling issues. I told my dad that nothing between me and my stepsister would ever be sibling issues because we are not siblings. And that my actual siblings, my younger brother and sister, would never do that to another person. My stepsister's been suspended.
In 1.5 miles. Take exit 14, New York 59, Spring Valley, Nanuet.
With the exception of my siblings, everyone seems to think that I'm wrong for doing what I did, for at least not talking to my stepsister first. I feel like going to Mia's parents was the right call because of how serious bullying can be for the person being bullied, and even just calling someone names can cut a person really deep. But I never expected this kind of reaction. Life at home is very awkward right now.
In 1 mile. Use the right lane to exit right.
To stand up to a bully, but it's not petty and mean-spirited to be a bully? What are your parents talking about, OP? And what's more, people saying that it's not real bullying? Well, in that case, what's fake bullying look like?
Watch out. Vehicle on shoulder ahead.
Yeah, someone could make the argument that you should have gone to your stepsister first, but realistically, how would that have gone? Hey, stepsister, I see that you're bullying Mia, and I would really appreciate if you stop. Oh, my bad. I recognize the errors of my ways, and I totally understand that I'm in the wrong here. My apologies. I'll stop. OP, you get a solid 0 out of 5 buttholes. Your stepsister...
Exit right to exit 14, New York 59, Spring Valley, Nanuet.
Wasn't invited to a sleepover party? My son just turned 10, and for his birthday, he wanted to do a superhero-themed slumber party. We did something similar on the last 2 years, and they all had a blast. The party started around 3, and we did pizzas, movie, popcorn, and designed...
In 900 feet. Turn right on New York 59 West.
And while he was well behaved, it was his parents who I felt were the problem. When we send out the invites, we tell the parents when the party...
Turn right on New York 59 West.
James was always the last one to be picked up.